The epic story of the founding of Hogwarts, complete script, 1 to 1 hour. Imagine a world where magic was still wild, where wizards lived hidden in dark forests and frozen caves, persecuted by muggles who didn't understand their gifts. A world where magical knowledge was lost with each generation, transmitted only through whispers and deteriorated parchments. This was the world of the 10th century, when 4 of the most powerful wizards in history decided it was time for a radical change. If you're fascinated by the mysteries of the magical world and want to discover the best-kept secrets of Hogwarts, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. And tell me in the comments, which of the 4 houses would you choose to belong to? Let's discover together the secrets that not even the books revealed completely. This is not just the story of a school. It's the saga of how 4 visionaries transformed an impossible dream into the most powerful magical institution in the world. Prepare to discover secrets that changed the history of magic forever. Godric Gryffindor, the Knight of Courage. In the wild lands of Godric's Hollow, where the wind howled between the rocky hills, lived a man whose courage became legend. Godric Gryffindor wasn't just a wizard, he was a warrior. At 35 years old, he had already faced dragons with his bare hands, freed entire villages from creatures of darkness, and most importantly, saved dozens of young wizards from the fires of the Inquisition. Gryffindor carried with him more than his enchanted sword and his oak wand. He carried a vision, a place where courage wasn't just a virtue, but a force capable of shaping the world. His magic was different. It pulsed with the energy of the earth, connecting to the deepest emotions of living beings. Helga Hufflepuff, the mother of magic. From the fertile valley near what we know today as Little Whinging, emerged a witch whose power resided not in strength, but in compassion. Helga Hufflepuff had discovered something other wizards ignored. The most powerful magic didn't come from the wand, but from the heart. She was capable of healing wounds others considered fatal and of making plants grow in barren land with just a touch. Hufflepuff had lost her own family to Muggle persecution when she was only 20 years old. But instead of being consumed by bitterness, she dedicated her life to protecting the helpless. Her power lay in union. She could connect the minds and hearts of people, creating magical bonds that transcended common understanding. Rowena Ravenclaw, the visionary of knowledge. From the frozen mountains of Scotland, where eagles built their nests on the highest peaks, descended a witch whose intellect challenged the limits of human understanding. Rowena Ravenclaw not only mastered magic, she understood it on levels others didn't even dream existed. At 28 years old, she had already created spells that seemed impossible and decoded arcane mysteries that confused century-old wizards. Ravenclaw possessed a unique gift. She could see the future through magical patterns, not as prophecy, but as pure mathematics. She could see how small actions unfolded into monumental consequences, and in her visions she saw something terrible approaching, an age of darkness that would engulf the magical world, unless something was done. Salazar Slytherin, the guardian of secrets. From the deepest of the dark forests of the south, where ancestral serpents guarded millennial secrets, emerged the most enigmatic of the 4 founders. Salazar Slytherin was a direct descendant of a lineage that traced back to the first wizards who walked upon the earth. He spoke with serpents not as a trick, but as an ancestral language that ran in his veins. Slytherin had witnessed the fall of entire civilizations due to ignorance and fear. He believed that magic was a sacred gift that should not be wasted or misused. His magic was different from the others, ancient, powerful, and dangerous. He could manipulate the very essence of life, understanding secrets others feared to explore. It was in the midst of an era marked by fear and destruction that 4 notable wizards, already revered for their legendary power, crossed their destinies. Historical records say little about this first meeting, but the accounts that survived speak of a shared calling, a vision beyond common understanding. They saw the relentless persecution against wizards. They perceived the immense waste of magical gifts and the disappearance of ancestral knowledge with each life taken. And then they dared to dream. A grand dream, almost insane, to build something that could protect, instruct, and preserve. They dreamed of a hidden refuge, at once strong as a wall and sacred as a temple, a magical castle, invisible to the eyes of the Muggle world, where children with magical gifts, regardless of their origin or blood, could safely learn to master their abilities. There, all known magical knowledge would be gathered, kept as a relic, and passed forward so it would never be lost in the mists of time. They envisioned a school, but not just any school, an incomparable institution destined to become the greatest academy of magic in history. From this extraordinary dream, they raised not just stones upon stones, but an eternal legacy destined to cross centuries. And the names of those four visionaries would never be forgotten. Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin, the eternal founders of Hogwarts. The four positioned themselves at the cardinal points of the clearing. Hufflepuff in the south, radiating warmth and life. Gryffindor in the east, where the sun of courage rises. Ravenclaw in the north, cold and calculating like the mountains, and Slytherin in the west, where the sun sets and mysteries deepen. They intertwined their wands in the center of the clearing, and the magic that followed was different from anything that had ever been attempted. It wasn't just a spell, it was a pact sealed with their own essences, a promise that transcended life and death. For 3 months, the four founders crossed the lands of Great Britain in search of the ideal place to raise their school. Each carried distinct expectations, requirements shaped by their values, talents, and worldviews. Reconciling all these criteria in a single location proved to be a much more difficult task than they anticipated. What they sought was not just a physical space, but sacred ground where magic could flourish in harmony with their most audacious dreams. Gryffindor sought a place that evoked bravery, vertiginous cliffs, silent valleys, and wild terrains where courage could be tested and heroes could be born. Hufflepuff dreamed of fertile and abundant soil, where the earth sang life and harvests sprouted generously to feed not just bodies, but hearts. Ravenclaw sought a point of mystical convergence, where magic vibrated intensely, conducive to cultivating knowledge and expanding wisdom. Slytherin demanded seclusion and mystery, hidden caves, forgotten tunnels, landscapes that could keep secrets as ancient as time itself. According to the oldest accounts, the revelation happened in the vast and untamed highlands of Scotland. The choice of location was not by chance. Rowena Ravenclaw, guided by intense visions during sleep, saw in her dreams the image of a magical boar of peculiar appearance, which led her through an unknown landscape to a solitary cliff at the edge of a lake as dark as volcanic glass. Inspired by this premonition, the four wizards departed toward the north, crossing inhospitable and enchanted terrains. Mountain chains that touched the sky, closed forests that whispered forgotten enchantments, and frozen lakes that hid creatures as ancient as time itself. It was a raw land, charged with energy. Each stone seemed to vibrate with memories of ancestral magic, and each tree seemed to observe in silence, as if keeping secrets from the world before language. After long days facing wild nature, they arrived at the exact place Rowena had seen. What they found took their breath away. An extensive valley, protected by colossal mountains that closed around it like natural walls. In the center, a deep black lake mirrored the gray sky with such perfection that it was impossible to distinguish where the earth ended and the firmament began. And there, as in a painting born from a dream, stood the cliff, the same one Rowena had glimpsed, rising on the lake's shore like a throne sculpted by nature itself, awaiting its destiny. Slytherin was the first to notice. "There's something under the water," he murmured, his eyes narrowing. "Something ancient and powerful." Ravenclaw closed her eyes, extending her magical consciousness. "It's not just something," she whispered. "It's a source, a spring of pure magic that flows from the very center of the earth." Hufflepuff touched the water with her fingertips. "I feel life here, not just creatures, but the very life force of the world. This place is a nexus where all energies meet." Gryffindor, always practical, looked around. "And the terrain? It's perfect. Protected by mountains, with a view of the valley, defensible against any attack." It was Hufflepuff who suggested what came next. "We shouldn't simply build over these ruins," she said. "We must connect with them, make our school not just a place of learning, but an extension of the Earth's magic itself." The ritual they performed that night was one of the most complex ever attempted. Each founder contributed a fundamental element. Gryffindor offered his blood, symbolizing sacrifice and courage. Hufflepuff offered her tears, representing compassion and growth. Ravenclaw offered her thoughts, materialized in memory crystals. And Slytherin offered his own magical essence, permanently binding himself to the location. Building Hogwarts wasn't just a matter of raising walls and towers. The founders were creating something that had never existed before. A building that would be part architecture, part living organism, part pure manifestation of magic. Each founder took responsibility for specific aspects of the construction. Gryffindor took charge of the defensive structure. The tall towers, the impenetrable walls, the protection systems against invaders. His magic infused the stones with a resistance that defied the laws of physics. Hufflepuff focused on functionality and comfort. Under her guidance, the kitchens became miracles of magical efficiency, capable of feeding hundreds of people with ingredients that seemed to multiply infinitely. She created the herb gardens, the greenhouses that flourished regardless of climate, and the heating systems that kept the castle warm even in the harshest winters. Ravenclaw took on the most complex task, creating spaces where knowledge could be not just stored, but expanded. The library she designed defied conventional geometry. It seemed to have more internal space than its external dimensions allowed. Shelves extended infinitely upward, accessible only by stairs that moved on their own. But Ravenclaw's true masterpiece was the astronomy tower. Built in a single night during a specific planetary alignment, the tower didn't just observe the heavens, it connected with them. Through complex magical calculations, she created a structure that could predict eclipses, forecast climate changes, and even detect magical disturbances in distant lands. While the others built upward, Slytherin excavated downward. His contributions to Hogwarts were largely invisible, but fundamental. He created a network of tunnels and secret passages that extended throughout the castle, connecting to the ancient ruins at the bottom of the lake. These tunnels weren't just escape routes, they were arteries through which magic flowed. Slytherin had understood that a truly magical building needed a circulatory system, a way to distribute and renew magical energy throughout the structure. Salazar crafted enchantments so intricate and discreet that even the most studious wizards would take generations to fully decipher them. His magical barriers went far beyond simple physical protection. They blocked espionage attempts, mind invasions, and even temporal interference, forming a virtually impenetrable defense network. The construction of Hogwarts lasted years, and during this time, the founders developed magical techniques that were lost with time. They learned to make stones that repaired themselves, wood that grew in specific forms, and metal that molded itself according to need. Uniting their forces, the four founders cast hundreds of enchantments upon the structure under construction. Each spell was a unique piece of refined magic, connecting harmoniously to the others in a composition of power as complex as it was grand. Most impressive were the moving staircases. Initially, this wasn't intentional. It was a side effect of the enormous amount of magic that permeated the castle. The staircases began to move on their own, responding to the needs and desires of the castle's occupants. Instead of trying to correct this, the founders embraced the peculiarity, refining it until it became a distinctive characteristic of Hogwarts. One of the most notable innovations was the creation of living portraits. Hufflepuff, with her understanding of the essence of life, discovered a way to imbue paintings with fragments of consciousness. They weren't just magical illusions, they were repositories of memories, personalities, and wisdom. The first living portrait was of Godric Gryffindor himself, painted during a break in construction. When the painting came to life, it was a moment of astonishment and terror. The portrait didn't just move, it thought, spoke, and maintained complex conversations. More importantly, it retained all the memories and knowledge of the real Gryffindor. But perhaps the most mysterious creation was the Room of Requirement. It wasn't planned by any of the founders. It simply emerged, as if the castle itself had developed consciousness and decided it needed a flexible space. Ravenclaw was the first to discover the room, during a night when she was desperately looking for a place to perform a particularly dangerous experiment. She passed 3 times through the same corridor, thinking intensely about the need for a safe laboratory, and a door simply appeared. The room didn't just provide what was needed, it anticipated needs. When Hufflepuff needed a place to care for a wounded dragon, the room transformed into a healing sanctuary. When Gryffindor needed to train for a particularly difficult duel, it became a complete training field. The decision to divide students into houses wasn't taken lightly. During the first years of planning, the founders debated intensely about how to structure magical education. Each had a different philosophy about what was most important to develop in young wizards. Godric Gryffindor sought young people whose bravery was unwavering, those who faced danger with a firm heart, even when fear knocked at the door. He valued the fearless spirit, the willingness to defend the weaker ones, and the courage to do what was right, even when it was difficult. Rowena Ravenclaw, in turn, chose those with agile minds and insatiable thirst for knowledge. Her eyes shone when finding students who asked complex questions, who saw beyond the obvious, and who treated learning as a pleasure, not as an obligation. Helga Hufflepuff believed in inclusion and justice. For her, what mattered was character. She welcomed those with generous hearts, willing to work hard to help others, and to build something lasting through dedication. In her house, everyone had value and space to grow. Salazar Slytherin, different from the others, prioritized those with burning ambition and natural cunning. He admired those who knew how to make plans, achieve their goals, and navigate the shadows when necessary. Over the years, however, he came to accept only those whose magical lineage was pure, believing that heritage was as important as talent. It was Hufflepuff who proposed the solution that would change magical education forever. "What if we don't choose?" she suggested. "What if we allow each student to develop their natural strengths, but within an environment that values their specific inclination?" The idea was revolutionary. Instead of forcing all students to follow the same path, they would create 4 different environments, each designed to nurture a specific type of magical potential. The creation of the houses was a literal magical process. Each founder invested a part of their magical essence in creating a space that reflected their values and teaching methods. Gryffindor created a house that was a fortress within the fortress. Located in one of the highest towers, decorated with reds and golds that reminded of embers of burning courage. The environment was designed to inspire bravery, walls covered with portraits of heroes, fireplaces that never went out, and windows that offered magnificent views of the surrounding mountains. Hufflepuff chose the depths of the castle, close to the kitchens and the roots of the place's magic. Her common room was cozy and welcoming, with tones of yellow and black that reminded of fields of ripe wheat and fertile earth. It was a place where everyone felt at home, where no one was a stranger for long. Ravenclaw built her house in the highest and most isolated tower, where silence allowed deep contemplation. Decorated in blue and bronze, with shelves full of books, astronomical instruments and magical puzzles, it was a place where curious minds could explore and discover without limits. Slytherin chose the depths of the lake, creating underwater chambers that were accessible only through secret passages. Decorated in green and silver, with walls that seemed like windows to the bottom of the lake, it was a place of mystery and ambition, where students could contemplate the depths of both the lake and themselves. The creation of the sorting hat was, perhaps, the most impressive magical feat of the founders. An artifact was needed that could read young minds and identify their natural inclinations, but that could also consider future potential and compatibility with the different houses. The process began with a common hat that belonged to Gryffindor, a leather hat he wore in battles. But transforming it into something capable of true selection required the contribution of all four founders. Gryffindor infused the hat with his ability to recognize true courage. Hufflepuff added the ability to perceive kindness and loyalty. Ravenclaw contributed with the capacity to assess intelligence and learning potential. And Slytherin. Well, Slytherin added something more complex. The ability to perceive ambition and potential for greatness, but also to identify those who might be tempted by the dark arts. When the sorting hat was used for the first time, it was with a test group composed of the founders themselves. They wanted to make sure the artifact would work correctly before using it on real students. The result was fascinating. The hat didn't just identify the obvious characteristics of each founder. It revealed hidden aspects of their personalities. Gryffindor had a deep intellectual curiosity that rivaled Ravenclaw. Hufflepuff possessed fierce ambition, only directed toward the common good. Ravenclaw had a silent courage that never boasted. And Slytherin had a deep and unwavering loyalty to those he considered worthy of trust. The hat sang for the first time that night, and its song spoke about unity and diversity, about how different types of strength can work together to create something greater than the sum of their parts. The first years of the school were marked by an era of incomparable splendor, a period when magical learning flourished and deep bonds formed between young people from all corners of the wizarding world. For many of the children who crossed the gates for the first time, especially those who had lived hiding their gifts or suffering for being different, entering the Great Hall was like waking up in an enchanted dream. The magical ceiling reflected the starry sky. Floating candles cast a soft light over the tables, and at the far end of the hall stood the four founders. Legendary figures in flesh and blood, ready to guide them. Life at Hogwarts was a daily journey of wonders. In Gryffindor Tower, students trained offensive magic and transfiguration with Godric Gryffindor himself. His lessons were charged with energy, courage, and challenges. He encouraged young people to face the unknown without fear. Helga Hufflepuff, with her calm voice and skillful hands, was the soul of the greenhouses and enchanted kitchens. She taught herbology and useful spells with sweetness and firmness, showing how magic can also heal, nurture, and unite. Rowena Ravenclaw, in the heights of the East Tower, guided students among the stars and the most abstract concepts of magical theory. Her classes were living riddles, provoking in young questioning minds an insatiable thirst for knowledge. Already in the depths of the castle, Salazar Slytherin instructed his pupils with surgical precision. His potions classes demanded absolute concentration, and the most promising had access to secret teachings about the power of the mind, such as legilimency and other forms of subtle manipulation of reality. The corridors of Livingstone were always full of smiles, hurried steps, and spells being practiced. Students explored hidden passages, conversed with the newly arrived resident ghosts, among them the enigmatic Bloody Baron, and competed with passion for the House Cup. From the beginning, the friendly tension between Gryffindor and Slytherin was visible, a direct reflection of the distinct philosophies of their creators. Godric defended inclusive bravery. Salazar believed in selective excellence. Their heated debates about the school's direction were commented on by everyone, but still permeated by a mutual respect that kept everything in balance. The gardens, forests, and even the lake around the castle were an invitation to discovery. Children learned to deal with magical creatures on the forest's edges, dove into the deep waters under the supervision of merpeople, and witnessed the first matches of an embryonic flying sport, Quadpot's precursor, ancestor of modern Quidditch. It was a time of hope, curiosity, and unity, and the school, still young, was already becoming a living legend under the feet of those who were learning to become what they were destined to be. After a decade of apparent success, cracks began to appear in the alliance between the founders. What had begun as philosophical differences was transforming into something deeper and more dangerous. Salazar Slytherin, who had always been the most cautious of the four, began to express growing concerns about the types of students being admitted. "You're being imprudent," he warned during a tense meeting at the end of the 10th year. "Admitting children of Muggles without properly verifying their lineages is a mistake we'll pay dearly for." Godric Gryffindor stood up abruptly, his hand instinctively going to where his sword normally was. "Lineage doesn't determine a wizard's worth, Salazar. Some of our best students come from Muggle families. And some of our worst problems too," retorted Salazar Slytherin, his eyes shining with dangerous intensity. "You don't understand the risks. There are dark forces that seek to infiltrate among us, and the easiest way is through those who have no deep roots in the magical world." Salazar Slytherin firmly believed that only those with pure wizard blood were prepared to understand the deepest secrets of sorcery. In his view, those born outside magical families were not only incapable of keeping such knowledge safe, but could also, through fear or ignorance, expose the magical community to the dangers of the outside world. This conviction was born from rooted pride and a sincere fear, albeit distorted, that magic could be extinguished if it fell into the wrong hands. Godric Gryffindor vehemently opposed this idea. For him, magic was a universal gift that didn't respect blood or surname. He valued the bravery, character, and spirit of those who, even in the face of adversity, chose to do what was right. Denying magical teaching to a child just because of their origin was, for him, an intolerable injustice. The debates between the two founders became increasingly intense. Heated discussions that echoed through Hogwarts halls and left students uneasy. The mutual respect that had once sustained their friendship was beginning to crumble. Helga Hufflepuff and Rowena Ravenclaw tried to mediate the conflict. Helga, always a defender of inclusion, couldn't accept the exclusion of those who demonstrated willingness to learn. Rowena, focused on intellect and curiosity as a metric of value, also rejected the idea that lineage defined a student's capacity. Both aligned with Godric, defending that the school's strength resided in its diversity. Salazar, feeling betrayed, isolated, and misunderstood, began withdrawing. His frustration transformed into obsession. Convinced that the school was being perverted, he decided to take measures on his own. If he couldn't guarantee Hogwarts' purity in life, he would create a mechanism to ensure that, in the future, someone would correct the course. Thus, using ancestral sorcery and a unique understanding of enchanted architecture, he secretly built a hidden room in the school's depths. Far below the dungeons, where no one but him dared explore, he erected what would become his darkest legacy, a chamber hidden from his colleagues' eyes, whose existence didn't even appear on enchanted maps. The entrance, cleverly disguised, could only be opened by someone who inherited the rare ability to speak with serpents, a trait he himself possessed and hoped to pass to an heir. And what hid inside wasn't just stone and silence. It was a living symbol of his ideology, a creature born of dark sorcery, created to obey only the Slytherin lineage. A basilisk, a colossal serpent with fatal eyes, whose mere sight could kill instantly. Its purpose was clear and cruel. When Slytherin's true heir emerged, the creature would be freed to cleanse Hogwarts of those whom Salazar believed should never have stepped in its corridors. The chamber's entrance was disguised in one of the most unlikely places, an old and infrequently used girls' bathroom. On one of the faucets, a small carved serpent hid the secret. Only the tongue of snakes could activate the passage to the hidden tunnels. For years, the chamber remained dormant, a buried secret, waiting for the right moment. Meanwhile, the climate between the founders had deteriorated to the point of unbearable. The philosophical confrontations between Salazar and Godric reached their peak. They say the rupture was sealed by a real duel. Not a simple dispute between colleagues, but a clash of convictions so powerful it resonated throughout the entire school. The details were lost with time, but the outcome is known. The friendship was broken, and the alliance that founded Hogwarts undone. Unable to accept the direction the school was taking, Salazar abandoned everything. Without ceremony, without goodbyes. He left behind his house in the dungeons, his teachings, his disciples, and something much more dangerous, a secret chamber sealed by hatred and pride. The true wound that opened that day wasn't between two wizards. It was a rupture in the ideal that gave birth to Hogwarts, the hope that everyone, regardless of origin, could grow together under the same roof. And although the castle remained firm, echoing with laughter and spells, under its stones rested a dark secret, waiting for the hour to awaken. Salazar Slytherin's departure left invisible but deep marks on Hogwarts' enchanted walls, and on the hearts of those who remained. They say Rowena Ravenclaw plunged into a state of silent sadness. The pain of separation between the founders was aggravated by a personal wound. Her daughter, Helena, consumed by envy of the fame and admiration her mother received, fled, taking with her an artifact of inestimable value, the diadem that contained the essence of Rowena's wisdom, a gesture that further tore apart the founder of Ravenclaw House. Godric Gryffindor, even sustaining his inclusive vision and emerging victorious in the debate about Muggleborns, couldn't escape the weight of loss. The friendship he had nurtured for Salazar, a brotherhood forged in battles and shared dreams, had been irreparably broken. The ideological victory left a bitter taste. Helga Hufflepuff, faithful to her welcoming nature, did everything in her power to preserve harmony among students and keep alive the school's initial ideal. But the balance had been undone, and no magic seemed capable of fully restoring it. Over the years, the legend of a hidden chamber built by Salazar began to circulate among students as a frightening tale. Many laughed at the idea, calling it superstition. Others, however, felt there was truth behind those whispers. Because under the foundation of stone and spell, Slytherin's dark legacy remained intact, a poisoned warning left for future generations. The silent promise that one day a descendant of his would return to continue an interrupted mission. Hogwarts' initial phase, marked by unity and hope, had come to an end. Although the castle continued to grow in prestige and importance, it now carried a hidden wound, a crack that symbolized the rupture between its own creators. The school, with all its beauty and grandeur, had also become a constant reminder that even the noblest dreams can be threatened by exclusionary ideologies. The hidden chamber, and everything it represented, remained dormant under the feet of generations of wizards and witches. Meanwhile, the rivalry between the four houses, especially between Gryffindor and Slytherin, became a perennial echo of the ancient division between courage and ambition, inclusion and purity, dream and fear. Hogwarts survived and flourished, but it was never the same, and thus ends the epic story of the founding of Hogwarts, not with an ending, but with a beginning. For each time a young wizard or witch crosses those doors for the first time, the founder's story begins again. Each time a student demonstrates courage in the face of danger, Gryffindor smiles. Each time someone shows kindness to a stranger, Hufflepuff is proud. Each time a curious mind makes a discovery, Ravenclaw celebrates. And yes, each time a young, ambitious person channels their determination toward the common good, even Slytherin finds redemption. Hogwarts is not just a school of magic. It's a testament to the power of education, of unity and diversity, and of the belief that every young person, regardless of their origin, carries within them the potential for greatness. This is the true magic of Hogwarts. This is the story that never ends. So which part of the story impressed you most? Which of the founders do you most admire? Leave in the comments your opinion about this epic saga, and don't forget to subscribe for more content about the mysteries of the magical world. The magic is just beginning.